All right, accounting students, welcome. Today, we're going to dive into the evolution of accounting information systems. And look, this isn't just some boring history of machines. It's actually the story of how companies learned to think, how they built their own brains to remember things, make decisions, and take action. So let's kick things off with this really big idea. See, an information system isn't just a box of wires and software. You have to think of it as a company's external brain. It's how an entire organization tries to systematize its memory, its ability to reason, and ultimately its actions. And honestly, if you get that one concept, you'll understand this entire journey we're about to take. So we're basically going on a 100-year time-traveling trip here. We're going to see how we went from, physical ledgers and old school calculators all the way to AI that can literally negotiate contracts all by itself. But here's the thing to remember. Through all of that change, the goal has always been the same: to find and destroy friction in business. Okay, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to walk through 6 key eras. We'll start in what I call the era of friction, move through the glass house monopoly and the desktop rebellion, then see how we connected all the pieces, and finally land in today's autonomous enterprise. Trust me, understanding these steps is going to be super important because they built the exact systems you'll be using in your careers. All right, let's jump right into our first era, the era of friction. I want you to really try to imagine a time before computers, a time when information was, well, it was a thing. It had mass, it had weight. You could hold it. And that meant it was incredibly slow and expensive to move around. For accountants, this was a massive, almost unimaginable headache. Okay, as a future accountant, just try to wrap your head around the amount of friction in something as simple as a sales order. Seriously, every single step was a physical handoff, a piece of paper going from this desk to that desk. And each one of those handoffs, that was a chance for something to go wrong. A delay, a lost paper, a typo, any of which could completely wreck the books. So you might be wondering, how did they move data fast back then? Well, the high-tech solution of the day was the pneumatic tube system. You've probably seen them in old movies. It was basically an analog internet, a physical network for shooting paper around. And yeah, it was pretty clever for its time, but think about the limitations. You could only send one little canister to one person at a time. And just storing all this paper, it led to a total crisis. I mean, think about it. A file could only be organized one way, maybe by customer name. What if you needed to see sales by region? Someone had to manually pull every single file and resort them. And even worse, different departments kept their own separate copies. Sales had their version, finance had theirs. Which one was right? It was a reconciliation nightmare. Okay, so the first real solution to all this manual chaos was a massive, centralized beast, the mainframe computer. These things were so huge and so sensitive, they were kept in these special climate-controlled rooms, often behind big glass walls. And that's exactly where this era gets its name, the glass house. But here's the catch. When you centralize all that computing power, you create a brand new problem, a bottleneck. All access was controlled by this super powerful, highly specialized IT department. If you were an accountant or a manager, you couldn't just log on. Nope. You had to go, hat in hand, and submit a formal request to this IT priesthood. And then you waited. And you really need to understand just how slow this process was. I mean, look at this typical cycle. On Tuesday, a manager asks for a simple sales report, something you could pull up on your phone in 10 seconds today. It takes a programmer a day to code it. It runs overnight on Thursday, and finally, on Friday, the paper report lands on the manager's desk. The information is already 4 days out of date. It was just painfully slow. So all of that frustration and waiting, it leads us right into our next phase, which was, for all intents and purposes, a rebellion. But this rebellion wasn't fought with guns. It was fought with a revolutionary new machine that completely smashed the glass house monopoly, the personal computer. And the killer app, the weapon of this rebellion, was the spreadsheet. For the very first time, an analyst could build their own financial model and ask those critical what-if questions directly. What if our sales jump by 10%? What happens if our costs go up? You could do variance analysis, build budgets, all with a speed and a flexibility that was it was unthinkable before. A job that the IT department weeks could now be done in minutes, right there on your desk. But, this new freedom led to a whole new kind of chaos. Every department went off and created its own systems, its own spreadsheets, its own databases. We call this islands of automation. Marketing's data couldn't talk to finance's data. A customer's address gets updated in one place but not the other. And this, of course, led to an accountant's absolute worst nightmare: constant, painful reconciliation.
So it was pretty clear what had to happen next. The next giant leap in information systems was all about solving this fragmentation problem. The goal was to connect all those islands and create one single unified nervous system for the whole company. And this slide shows you the solution, and it is the absolute heart of modern accounting information systems, the ERP, or Enterprise Resource Planning System. The genius of an ERP is that it's all built on a single central database. It creates one single source of truth for the entire organization. When sales makes an entry, the general ledger gets updated instantly, automatically. No more reconciliation nightmares. It just works.
Which brings us to right now, to the cutting edge. The focus has shifted again. We're moving beyond just automating simple, repetitive tasks, and we're stepping into an era where systems are starting to automate complex, intelligent decisions. And this, my friends, is probably the biggest leap of them all. And a really mind-blowing example of this is Walmart. They use AI agents, basically autonomous chatbots, that go out and independently negotiate pricing and contract terms with thousands of their smaller suppliers. I mean, think about that. It's automating a core business function that requires reasoning, strategy, and negotiation, things we used to think only humans could do. Okay, so after all that history and theory, what does this 100-year evolution actually mean for a single accounting transaction? How has all this technology really changed a core process you're going to see every day, like the order-to-cash cycle? What's just so wild about this is the insane collapse in time, right? We go from weeks down to literally seconds. But the really important thing, the thing I want you to focus on, is that last row. The real evolution isn't just about speed, it's about the shift in who's in charge. The system goes from being a dumb record keeper that just tells you, hey, we're out of stock, to being a predictive, autonomous partner that says, don't worry, I saw this coming, and I already reordered that for you yesterday. And that really gets at the ultimate goal of modern systems. It's not just about process efficiency anymore, doing the same old tasks, just faster. It's about process elimination. Why should a person even have to type and send an invoice? Why not use a smart contract, a self-executing agreement on a blockchain that can automatically see a delivery has been made and just release the payment? No human required. This whole evolution brings up a really profound question for the future of business and for your careers. For decades, automation was all about replacing manual, repetitive work, the work of the clerk. But these newer systems, like that AI negotiator at Walmart, they're starting to take over the cognitive functions that used to belong only to managers, things like planning, strategizing, and making decisions. So, the most important thing for you to take away from all this is simple. As you start your careers, you're stepping into a totally new world. You won't just be using these advanced systems as tools. You're going to be their collaborators. Your job will be to work alongside these intelligent agents, using their power to make smarter, faster, more strategic decisions. The system is no longer just a tool. It's becoming your partner.